We are starting the webcast now. I'd like to invite you all to this meeting of the governance. Sorry, start again. Welcome to this Governance and Audit Committee held here at 9:30 on Wednesday, 16th of March 2022. Via video. Welcome everyone, and I know it's a large agenda, so we'll try and get through it as quickly as possible. I'd just like to say first of all that our friend David Wilson over there in Manchester for Audit Wales, I believe you're retiring, David.
I'm indeed. My last governance and audit committee ever, I think.
Well, on behalf of the audit committee here at Denbighshire County Council, David, I want to thank you for all the hard work that you put in and bringing to the committee a friendly face and criticism when needed, but also great understanding of the work that goes on within the Governance and Audit Committee here at DCC.
Can I just,
thank you.
Barry, can I add my thanks to David? It's been, on the occasions we have met, it's been very pleasant, and I would consider that you are more constructive in your criticism, which makes it a lot easier.
Thank you.
Okay, cheers, David.
Thank you.
All the best for the future. Moving on then, members, apologies. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, can I give apologies for Hugh Hilditch Roberts? He unfortunately can't be there for the item relating to, I forget what it is now, but something to do with him.
Okay, Bobby, thank you very much. Any more apologies? No. Moving on then to agenda item number 2. Is there any declarations of interest?
Please, Gary. Members will be aware of the requirement under the Council's Code of Conduct to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect of any business to be considered at today's meeting. Such interest should be declared now or as soon as the councillor affected becomes aware that they have a personal or prejudicial interest in today's business. All members declaring an interest are required to state clearly what the interest is and to advise whether it is a personal interest or a personal and prejudicial interest as defined in the Code of Conduct. Any member declaring a prejudicial interest will be required to leave the meeting for the duration of the business and can take no part in the proceedings. Members with a personal interest only may take part in the debate and any vote. If a personal or personal and prejudicial interest is declared today that has not previously been disclosed and recorded, the councillor concerned will be required to complete and sign a declaration of interest form, which is available online.
Thank you, Gary. Paul, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair. I don't know whether I've got an interest in item 8. Sorry, an interest that I should declare.
Yes, I think it would be appropriate for you to declare a personal interest in that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Moving on then to agenda item number 3. Urgent matters. Notice of items which, in the opinion of the chair, should be considered at the meeting as a matter of urgency pursuant to section 100B(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. I've not received any urgent matters, and neither has Gary. Thank you. Moving on then to agenda item number 4, which is the minutes, to receive the minutes of the Corporate Governance Committee held on the 26th of January 2022, pages 7 and 14 to 14. I'll go through the pages first of all, and then come back for any matters arising. So page 7, page 8, page 9, page 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Is there any matters arising from the minutes, members? Paul?
Thank you, Chair. Two matters, if I may. Minutes, page 8. Matters arising from the previous meeting. Reference to the action plan for contract procedure rules. There's reference to a report going to CET and any concerns raised with SLT. Will that be picked up by this committee in any way?
I think sorry, I don't want to speak for Lisa, but I think that will be in follow-up reports in respect of the actual audit that will come to this committee.
Okay, and the second one, page 12, foot of page 12, it says there under the review of Queen's Buildings, a report was due to be presented to Cabinet in the next month. Was that a report on Queen's Buildings or contingency or something else?
There was a report to Cabinet in, sorry, which month are we now? We're in March, aren't we? So there was a report to Cabinet in February relating to requirement for additional funding, and there was a report to Cabinet yesterday to provide delegated authority to enter into the construction contract.
Okay, Gary, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Martin, you want to come in? You're on mute, Martin.
Sorry, guys. It's early in the morning, and I've been up very early this morning too. Just a quick question on 12. We've now secured or signed the Verto contract. Am I right in saying that? And are we making amendments to that? Is that going ahead as proposed at that in those minutes? Thank you.
Martin, can you just let us know where you're talking about within the minutes?
Oh, sorry, it's page 12, and it's the section, oh, bear with me a moment, I've got to get me, where we're saying in the tender project management system has been completed and Verto has been successful in securing the contract. Agreement is made to enhance the system. I just wondered how we're getting on with that. Because there are questions about Verto in other reports as we go through the day. And I think, that's all I really need to know. Are we moving ahead with the changes that we need to make sure that Verto is fulfilling our requirements?
Yeah, I can answer that one. I understand there are enhancements to the Verto system, and they are still being worked on, and that is taking place at the moment and will be for the coming months, and that should provide better reporting and better system facilities for project management in particular. Steve Gadd might know a bit more on the project management side, but I don't want to land him in it. Okay.
Do you want me to come in there, Chair?
Sorry, Steve. Yes, if you could, please.
Yeah, just the reason I think that they said mentioned me was that the part of it is trying to align all the business cases. So there's a different business case that goes to Strategic Investment Group than what's used in Verto, because Verto, the old version, couldn't do what we required for the capital. There's a whole load of information that we need for capital business cases. The new system is more flexible. That work is slightly delayed because of the audit. It's the capital team that will be working with the project team, and because they're the same people that do the statement of accounts. Unfortunately, the delay to the signing off the statement of accounts in the autumn has delayed that work. But there still is the intention that Nicola Neal from BIM and Val Holland from my team are working closely to progress that, and that's still the aim.
Thank you, Steve. Okay with that, Martin? Yeah, thank you. No more questions on the minutes. Could I have somebody to approve the minutes, please? And second? Martin approved and Rees second. Thank you very much. Moving on then to agenda item number 6, which is number 5, review of commissioning older people's care home placements, pages 15 to 88, to receive the review conducted by Audit Wales into the commissioning of older people's care home placements in North Wales councils and Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board. Are you leading on this one, David?
Yes, I am. I'll give some context and some introduction to it, if that's okay. So we carried out this regional work in North Wales, looking at how partners work together and separately in the commissioning of care home placements for older people. And this built on the work that we did in Denbighshire and Conwy in 2020 in our social services budget pressures work. We conducted the field work in February and March 2021. Whilst councils and the health boards are responsible for commissioning care home placements, they do so within a legislative and policy framework set out by Welsh Government. As we drew key messages together, we realised that this framework was itself encouraging a way of working that was impacting on health and social care professionals and the people that they serve. So this led us to write 2 reports, one for Welsh Government and a second report for the North Wales councils and Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board. Whilst we did not carry out similar reviews in other regions, we anticipate that many of the challenges highlighted in North Wales will be replicated to a greater or lesser extent across Wales. So our initial draft reports were with Welsh Government and the RPB statutory partners in July. Since then, we've worked with everyone to achieve reports that fairly, both accurately and balanced, describe the strengths and weaknesses of the current system. So the main concerns that we raised with you are as follows. Partners are working together to provide care for vulnerable service users, but are carrying significant risk associated with market stability, workforce and pre-placement agreements, along with a reliance on spot purchasing. The Regional Partnership Board's 2018 market and shaping statement set out some aspirations for care home commissioning, and these were added to by the RPB's response to A Healthier Wales in 2019. However, neither of these have driven the development of a clear regional strategy for commissioning care home placements for older people in North Wales, or a delivery plan to take forward the aspirations that have been identified. So whilst the RPB network brings partners together to think regionally, its structures, largely set out by Welsh Government, are extensive and complex, and lines of accountability do need to be strengthened. Nationally set fee structures are complex and result in a significant focus on cost, which causes division amongst partners and has the potential to impact adversely on service users and their families. Partners need to do more to demonstrate that they are meeting their statutory responsibilities around Welsh language and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act when commissioning care home provision and making individual placements. So for North Wales, for Welsh Government, I'll do North Wales in a minute. For Welsh Government, we've challenged them to look at some of the key legislative requirements as they undertake their review of current policy, and to assure themselves that the changes they propose go far enough to resolve some of the long-standing challenges that we have seen and reported. In particular, we've asked them to look at the complexity of the funding models, to better describe how it expects pooled funds to operate, to take steps to deliver better scrutiny and accountability of RPB activity and decisions, and to develop a framework against which to evaluate progress that RPBs make towards their wellbeing goals. So, in concluding, whilst our report for Welsh Government clearly places responsibility some responsibility with them, it's essential that partners look at their own roles in the process. There are considerable numbers of older people in care homes, and the councils and health board spend many millions of pounds on their care. You need to be assured that public money is being spent wisely and that you are working toward building a more sustainable care sector that has provision for the types of care that you need for the citizens of today and the future. So to help with this, we made 5 recommendations for the councils and health boards. And these are: you need to ensure the consistent use of pre-placement agreements across the region. The current approach for commissioning care home places can cause tensions between partners and result in poor value and poor service user experience. You, North Wales councils and Betsy Cadwallader need to work together to review local arrangements for commissioning care home placements to eliminate avoidable adverse impacts on service users and each other. Accountability is a cornerstone of public sector decision making. Governance arrangements need to scrutinise decisions and hold decision makers to account. So you, the North Wales councils and Betsy Cadwallader, need to strengthen your partnership arrangements to ensure proper accountability and effective scrutiny. You, through the Regional Commissioning Board, need to develop a regionally agreed care home commissioning strategy, and following this, develop an associated delivery plan. And you need to review the commissioning arrangements for care home placements to ensure they fulfil their statutory responsibilities around the Welsh language and the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So our reports are on your agenda. They provide more detail to support these recommendations, and the management response sets out the actions that partners have agreed to take. So I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, or happy to wait till you've dealt with the management response.
Thank you, David. Nicola, did you want to come in?
David Soley, the interim head of community support services, is going to the management response. Chair, Dio.
Thank you, Nicola. David, do you want to come in before I bring the members in?
Yeah, Borodar Pab, David Soley, Dewey. Morning, everybody. I'm David Soley. As Nicola says, I'm the interim head of service for adults. The recommendations, again, and the management response are in the report. Recommendation 1 in relation to the PPA, partners are now looking to review the PPA and relaunch with providers. In the past, there has been some difficulty getting all of our providers to sign up to that PPA, but we will take to ensure they do and that they don't win.
David, David,
David,
can you turn your camera off?
Yeah.
Thanks, David.
There we are. How much of that did you miss?
Most
Most of it.
Okay, I'll start from the beginning then. So the first recommendation was in relation to the pre-placement agreement. So just so everybody's clear what that is, we don't have a contract as such with our care home providers. What we have is a number of providers that sign up to a pre-placement agreement, which makes it clear what we're expecting to get from those providers. We are going to be, as a region, reviewing that pre-placement agreement with our partners, and then asking our providers to sign up to the new pre-placement agreement. And the pre-placement agreement basically talks about what we expect in return for the fees that we pay. So we'll have a great deal of influence over the experience that the citizen or the carer will get from that care home or nursing home. Recommendation 2, we are going to be holding workshops. This is in relation to the current approach to commissioning of care homes, and we are going to be running workshops across the region, because again, this is a regional, not just a Denbighshire County Council issue, to ensure all the commissioners are aware of each other's processes, and where possible and where appropriate, those processes are aligned as much as possible. And also to identify common practice across the organisations, because we are talking about 7 different organisations working with many hundreds of residential and nursing home placements. Item 3, accountability being a cornerstone. Again, Dave mentioned the complexity of the organisations that are looking at this at the moment, and so there will be a review of membership of the Regional Partnership Board, but also looking at its relationship with the other structures that influence commissioning, such as the Regional Commissioning Board and others. So we'll be reviewing that, reviewing the membership and the terms of reference to ensure that they work well together and that the accountability between and within is managed appropriately. Item 4, the recommendation 4, we develop a regionally agreed strategy, and we will be working on the extensive work that we've undertaken recently on the market shaping review and also the population needs assessment, in order that we can inform a strategy that delivers the care and support that we need for the very diverse populations across North Wales. So that's a piece of work that is in train, and will be work we do, as I say, in addition to the market shaping review and a population needs assessment, which is already underway. Recommendation 5 in relation to Welsh language. This is always a big challenge for us, because finding a workforce capable of delivering support through the Welsh language can be a challenge in parts of North Wales, but it's a challenge that we're up to and that we have had a great deal of success in. This is also something that we do on a very individual basis. So when we're looking at the cultural and language needs of citizens and carers, that is often very much about matching them to a very specific care home in a very specific area. So that is something that, although obviously we take account of within pre-placement agreements, and it's very much a priority of ours, when it comes to actually placing somebody in an appropriate environment, that's often very much down to the individual clinicians working with the family and the citizen to ensure they find a care home or nursing home that meets the cultural and language needs of that citizen. And that is our response to the 5 recommendations.
Okay, thank you, David. Bobby, did you want to come in as lead member?
Yes, thank you for that, Chair. I think David really has outlined exactly what we are likely to be doing in the very near future. I don't know whether I could ask you, David, in addition to what you've said, how long do you think the review of the PPA with our partners will take? And also, how are we, as most of our care home are private care homes owned by private, sort of the private sector, have we included them in our working out how to deal with the increasing numbers in the future?
In relation to engagement with the pre-placement agreement, yes, we are working with our providers. In terms of timescales, that's quite a difficult question to answer at the moment, because you'll know that the last 2 years have been very challenging due to COVID, and most of our work has been around ensuring that our care homes and nursing homes were able to deliver safe care in the context of COVID. So that has involved an awful lot of effort, but we are always working with them around issues that are in the PPA, so we're not starting from scratch. So I would hope that during this calendar year, we would be able to get that piece of work completed, and we'd be able to get the providers signed up. In relation to your point about capacity, I think it's also, and again, Dave's very useful report touched on this, alternatives to residential and nursing care are also a very important aspect of this discussion. And you'll know local authorities across North Wales are working hard to develop stocks of extra care housing, which are a viable alternative to residential care and are actually the preference for our service users and carers. Inevitably, if we talk to citizens and carers about what they want their own front door, so they want to be able to remain independent, safe and supported for as long as possible. So extra care housing will actually, the increase in the capacity in extra care housing will actually enable us to deliver care outside of residential and nursing settings for many people. So that's an important strand to this.
Yeah, and just to add that as it's been well and truly documented of late, the shortages in staff has been absolutely dire, worse than I can remember in my 10 years of involvement. And this is not just down to what councils can or can't do, or for that matter, what health boards can or can't do. This is for government to grasp the mettle and really try and improve the care, the terms, the conditions, the pay, you name it. In terms of social care, we're lagging behind. We don't have a level playing field with health. And I think that the health minister and the government are trying desperately now to address this. They are bringing in the national minimum wage, or the national living wage, should I say, very soon, but that's not the end of it. So I think that's a huge part of the problem and the risks, if you like, in terms of our staff shortages. So I just thought I should make that clear. No matter what we do, we need the government to act on that.
Thank you, Bobby, for that. Turning to members. Rhys, you had your hand up first.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the two Davids there for the report and for going through that. I know we've got a massive agenda in front of us, but I think we've been a little bit hasty. Before getting to the recommendations, I'm intrigued by what lies in the page before that, page 17, 4.1 and 4.2. Now, I've learned to have the greatest respect for Audit Wales, but when I read there that the health board and the local authorities felt strongly that the report was not balanced, I'm just wondering how often that happens to Audit Wales, that you have the reply that the report is not balanced. And if we go to 4.2, following further discussions, you prepared a revised version. I'm intrigued at what the difference between the original and the revised version was, but obviously we don't have that in front of us. Is this normal that a report is turned down and rejected flatly and then has to be revised? That's the question, Chair. Thank you.
Do you want to come back on that one, Nicola?
Think if Audit Wales would like to respond first, and then I'll follow on that.
Yes, certainly. I think the I mean, which one goes first? Let's talk about it. Does it normally happen? So yes, we have a clearance process. We have an internal clearance process whereby the people who've done the work, that work is challenged internally to make sure we've covered everything that we should cover, and that the conclusions are supported by the evidence. So we have a robust internal arrangement, and then we move out to the audited bodies. In this case, 6 councils and the health board, and we invite those bodies to comment on factual accuracy, balance, and tone within the report, because it's absolutely critical that we get an agreed report at the end of the day with the bodies. Otherwise, they won't implement the recommendations. We have to get agreement, and it's only fair that we reflect accurately what the position is. With this particular report, it was I suppose it was a little bit difficult for the councils and the health board, and equally Welsh Government, because we wouldn't share each other's reports with them. We gave the draft report to the councils and the health board for factual accuracy, and we gave Welsh Government the national report for them to consider the challenges that we're placing with them. It's obvious, had we shared, hopefully Nicola will agree, had we shared the national report and you'd seen what we were saying to Welsh Government, I'm sure that some of the concerns that were raised through the clearance process would have disappeared. The challenges that we had were that you hadn't seen each other's reports, and the councils and the health board were very keen that we actually made it clear that they were operating within the environment, which was national policy and national guidelines. So that was the context. And I think there's always matters of factual accuracy, whether there's 3 of this or 4 of that, and whether we term things correctly as we've picked it up. We always have issues like that as we're clearing reports. And the clearance process is an opportunity to make sure that we get a report which is factually accurate. In this particular report, we emphasised the role of Welsh Government, the policy and the legislation within the environment that you're operating in. And I think that was probably the biggest change of all of it. Nicola, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say we don't disagree. We may have different opinions, but ultimately it is about how we reach a consensus and agree how to take things forward. And it was a challenging discussion, but I think, as David said, the complexity of the context within which we are operating and the role and responsibility of Welsh Government in setting some of that context was really difficult to see within our regional report, and therefore initially I think we felt we were being criticised for some things that were outside of our control, albeit recognising there were things within the regional report that we absolutely were responsible for and we needed to make improvements on. I think it's also fair to say that we did feel that during the review, we had highlighted a number of really positive, good practice areas where we felt that actually, as a region, we were demonstrating areas of really good practice, where we were potentially sector leading in some aspects. And actually the relationship with providers across a huge geographical area and a very complex system was very good. And we didn't feel that necessarily in the first draft, those positives and the balance of the report came through. So I think it's fair to say we accepted the second draft, albeit recognising that there are still areas of improvement that we do need to make. But it was a much more balanced review that was agreed across the region. Diolch.
Thank you to both David and Nicola. You okay with that response, Rhys?
Yes, thank you. It's still intriguing, but I've got other questions for another day. I'm fine for the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Rhys. Martin, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, God, this was a report and a half. I must admit, after you chewed through it, you weren't quite sure, how much more there was going to be. I looked at all of this last night, and there's a couple of very quick questions that perhaps David could answer for me or somebody. I picked up in one of the parts of the report a comment on rainbow hospitals. I just wondered what that was. Just a brief answer will do nicely. Thank you. David, you also mentioned that the pool fund does not provide value for money. I just wondered a bit more about that pool fund, how that worked. You also said that the Welsh Government structures are extensive and complex, and I think we as in local government feel that as well, or some of us do. And when you look at the structure chart on page 57, is it? You probably gives you some of the answers as to why this is such a complex situation. Surely part of the problem here is there's so many bodies involved and so many handoffs. And you do wonder, I've seen some structure charts in my time, but that one beats them all. So, it just beg the question, whether we need to be looking, in greater detail as who's doing what, and how we could streamline that in some way to ensure that it's a more efficient process. Also, you mentioned somewhere in there Foundation Economy Challenges Fund project, which is going to sort out not-for-profit recruitment, I think, of staff or providing staff. I just wonder where that's come from. I've never heard of that one before. Is this another wing of Welsh Government? You know, another, because Welsh Government grows like topsy, and I'm assuming that that might be something there. I'm not criticising it, I'm just asking the question, you know, what is it? I've never heard of that one before. And then finally, which is a bit more sort of local, really, I suppose, when we're providing, you know, care for, you know, residents, and, you know, as we all know, as councillors, you know, our population is ageing. Fortunately, more people are living a lot longer, but of course, with that comes a lot more of a burden for us all long term in providing care. When somebody is living in North Wales and perhaps needs to be nearer their families, because sometimes that happens, do we work with other agencies or other authorities across North Wales, obviously, to perhaps move people nearer to their families, or even across the border into England to move, again, residents closer to their families? So just that final point. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. David, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, of course I will. There's a couple I wouldn't mind deferring through to Nicola, if that's or David, if that's okay. Particularly around the Rainbow Hospitals, the foundation economy, and you might want to say a bit more about how you work with other councils, but I'll have a go at that anyway myself. If I pick up the other point, you asked me about the pool fund arrangement. If you remember, we presented a report last year which talked about the pool fund arrangement. You have an arrangement whereby each of you administer this arrangement on behalf of the other councils and the health board, and quarterly the other 5 councils and the health board pay to you the amount of money that they've spent on residential care and nursing home care. You do an internal transfer for yours. That you keep that money for probably up to a day, and then you then send exactly the same amount back to them. And for that, you receive £20,000 to cover your administration costs. And so when we talk about poor value and concerns around the pool fund arrangement, you do this administrative arrangement, which Welsh Government has said meets the minimum standards, statutory requirements. So we understand why you do it, but if you talk about sort of the man or the woman on the street that we talk to, I'd find it very difficult to explain that arrangement and have somebody say that it made any sense whatsoever, whether it's to meet the legislation or not. And you'll know that in the when I did my introduction, I mentioned the Welsh Government, the report that we've done to Welsh Government, and some of the challenges we've placed to Welsh Government. One of the challenges that we've made to Welsh Government is that they should explain in more detail to the public sector what benefits they expect to generate out of these pool fund arrangements and how they expect them to work. So if you like, we're saying to you, we don't think it provides value, and it's a poor use of public money. And we are saying to Welsh Government that if they're you're doing it because they're insisting that it's done. If they are insisting it's done, they need to explain to you how they think it should work and how they think it's going to benefit you. So, you know, we have tackled both the Welsh Government and yourselves in the way that we've addressed that. I think
Thank you, David.
The Welsh Government structures. Yeah, I agree with you. Very, very common. Sorry, not Welsh Government structures. The structure chart that fits around the way that the RPB operates. Yeah, it's complex, very, very complex, and I think you're right. That's why we put it in the report, because it's your structure chart, and we wanted to demonstrate how complex it actually was. It has to be said, though, that part of the complication around here is that North Wales is the biggest of the RPBs. So you've got, if you look at I think it's Powys that you've got one council and one health board. You know, that's obviously going to be much easier to operate. You're dealing with 6 councils and a health board, plus all the other partners who need to be involved in the RPB. So yes, it's complex, and that's why we've gone back to Welsh Government and raised it with them around the complexity. Most of it is you're told how you need to do it. So there's no criticism of you there. But you do need to find a way to make it work. It is complex, so we're raising that complexity with you. You mentioned placements in other authorities and in England. Yeah, I believe that does happen. Nicola and David probably want to say more about that. But it does happen, and we believe that you do place people close to family because that suits their personal situation. But in doing so, sometimes when you move people away from North Wales, they lose the Welsh language perspective there. They don't have to, but in the reality is that they probably do. So can I park my response there? I don't know if Nicola or David want to perhaps come in and elaborate a bit more.
Thank you, David. David, did you want to come in?
If I take the questions on the Rainbow Hospitals and the placement outside of North Wales or around North Wales, the Rainbow Hospitals, you'll remember that at the start of the COVID pandemic, there was real concern about the ability of the NHS to be able to provide sufficient beds to treat all the people that were affected by the pandemic. And as a consequence, across the UK, hospitals, emergency hospitals were set up in various buildings in order to create additional capacity. In North Wales, it was decided these would be named Rainbow Hospitals, and there were hospitals in Deeside, in Llandudno, and in Bangor, and they were temporary facilities just to provide capacity to take the surge of COVID patients at the start of the pandemic. In relation to the placement of people around Wales and sometimes outside of Wales, it's really important, regardless of whatever agreements we have locally, that the discussion between the practitioner, the citizen who's going to be placed in the residential nursing placement, and the family takes full account of the family's cultural, social, language needs, but also relationship to family. A care home or a nursing home often becomes somebody's home for life. That's where they're going to stay for the rest of their days. And being able to maintain contact with family is a really important issue. So we do, in order to facilitate that, move people to wherever is appropriate. Obviously, cost and quality are always a consideration. And as Dave makes the important point, language can also be a big consideration. But we do try and accommodate people in a way that they will meet their needs. And we do have examples now where we place in England, sometimes in Scotland. We primarily place people in North Wales, but that could be in a different county. But as I say, the purpose of that is to try and meet the needs of the people and their families.
Thank you, David. Nicola, did you want to come in?
Yeah, diolch, Chair. Okay, pool budgets. Many of you will have been in scrutiny meetings where I have brought reports on pool budgets. I'm the regional lead for pooled budgets for North Wales. I think it's, I completely agree with Audit Wales in as much as the approach we've taken in North Wales is part of a journey towards the full ambitions of a pooled budget for care homes. As I've reported to you before, the totality of the budget, of the pooled budget for care homes for North Wales is actually larger than the entire budget of Ynys Môn. So that's the context within which we have been doing this work. And we're certainly on a journey. And we recognise that there are benefits, but also challenges around pooled budgets. And we do see them as part of a basket of tools to support partnership working. but we don't believe that a pooled budget on its own is necessarily going to deliver integrated working and better outcomes for citizens. So we're still on a journey in terms of the Foundational Economy Challenge Fund. I had to sort of remember what that was, because it was back in 2019. Welsh Government launched a new fund, 4.5 million, for areas across Wales to look at different sectors, including health and social care, but others also housing, construction, tourism, etc. To develop innovative ways of supporting and growing good practice and new forms of service delivery rooted in local communities. And as part of the work that we've done through the North Wales Workforce Board, our approach look at how to implement a not-for-profit care sector within North Wales. So that's still an ongoing piece of work. Obviously, COVID came along and that one was put on pause for a while. And then in terms of the structure, yes, it is a busy diagram, a busy structure. That might give you some indication as to why I look tired all the time. But actually, these are the structures that we have in place to deliver what is a huge agenda across health and social care, and actually is something that we do to deliver on the priorities and on the legislative requirements, not only set out by Welsh Government, but also to deliver on the regional priorities of the Regional Partnership Board. So lots of work going on, and lots of outcomes and achievements delivered as a result of this. So whilst it looks busy and complicated, it actually does deliver lots of really positive things as well. I think we've covered all of those issues now, Chair.
Thank you,
Neil.
Nicola. Okay, Martin.
Thanks, Chair. Actually, it just goes to prove, doesn't it, you know, that the last 2 COVID years have passed so quickly. And I must admit, I'd forgotten they were called rainbow hospitals. Of course, most of us, I think, thought of them as the Nightingale hospitals, in which, of course, was in England, and that was on the television every night. So thank you for clarifying that. Yeah, okay. Thanks for your responses. Something for us all to bear in mind. And I look forward, hopefully in future, possibly to seeing reduced structure charts. That would be marvellous. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin.
Me too, Martin.
Steve Gadd, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, just on the pool budgets, just a couple of points from what David said, really. Don't disagree with what anything that Nicola's just said, but the actual payments, they have to be returned on the same day. There's no, it can be done the next day or whatever. They're huge payments, so they have to be turned around instantly. So they come into our account, and we have to make sure that the authority that's given us that funding has the funding back the same day for treasury management purposes. So that's the thing on there. The 20k contribution isn't just for this task. We supply the financial advice to the RPB. So I'm the name Section 151 support for the RPB. I know it's not a joint committee. It's not like GWER. It hasn't got any formal structures around it like that. But we are, Denbighshire is the council that gives the support to the RPG as and when required. So it's a general contribution. Yeah, so just 2 points there. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Steve. Paul, you wanted to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, at this stage, 2 comments and a question, but I'd like to preface all that by saying to David Wilson, whatever the steps and problems were in getting to this stage, I found it a lot easier to read than I expected when I saw the title. So thank you. My first comment, Chair, is that I think this is comparable to the report last time on environmental ambitions, where it could be of wider interest. I know elections are coming up, but I suggest that probably members outside of this committee would also find it of interest, especially when you notice a statistic about the over 65s in Denbighshire increasing by 29.6%. That was quite a, yeah, that stood out quite a lot. My second comment is that I think Lisa will confirm that there was at some point a partnerships audit which looked at the relationship between the council and the health board. I think this goes a lot further in this particular area and is complementary to the work that she did then. But my question at this stage is this, that you may recall that in November, we had presented to us the corporate risk register. And I had a quick look at it last night, and I think there are some risks which the agreed actions in the management response actually impact upon. My question is, will the corporate risk register, as appropriate, be amended, or has it been amended, to take account of the agreed actions in the management response in this report? Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Who wants to answer that one for Paul?
Should I come in, Chair? So I have put in the chat the statistics around population and the impact of that. You're absolutely right. A wider audience. We have just recently reported on the development of the new population needs assessment that went to scrutiny first, and then it was reported to Cabinet. So members have had a really good opportunity to look at and comment on the population needs assessment that is currently being signed off. So that's on that one. In terms of the risk register, I think the risk register, if I'm honest, reflects the issues that have been raised in this report, because these aren't new issues. I think we're well cited on the challenges around commissioning. We're well cited on the challenges around the workforce and around having sufficiency within the services that we provide ourselves and also commission. In addition to the corporate risk register, there is also a service risk register, which David and his team will look at and review on a regular basis and also update. So I think there's a combination there of the corporate risk register, I think, does take account of these recommendations and the risks within this report. But we also have the service risk register, which is much more specific to the operational nuances of this report and the recommendations.
Thank you, Nicola. My only concern was that they should be aligned. Let me put it that way. That the management actions in this, the actions in this management response and the mitigations in the risk register should be on the same page. That's all. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nicola. Rhys, you wanted to come back?
Yes, thank you. Very, very quickly, Chair. Page 71, regional pooled funds. I did have concerns about those. I have concerned when I hear of pooled funds and the health board being involved, as quite a few people in this room know. I'm just double checking that the regional pooled funds and who the finance officer is responsible for that. Do I understand that it is Denbighshire and that it's Steve? Okay, that was
Yes.
just to check. Okay,
so
thank
I'm the lead officer for the region for the overall approach to pool budgets, and Steve is the lead section 151 officer for that.
Okay, I'm pleased to hear that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhys. Bobby, you want to come back? Bobby's gone. Bobby's disappeared.
I think she was going to say we're fabulous, but
Thank you very much, Nicola.
which I'd obviously agree with.
Well, it is a big agenda, so we're going to have to move on. Any more questions, members, before I move on to the recommendation? Well, moving on to recommendation is that the committee notes the recommendations in the Audit Wales report on commissioning of older people's care home placements by North Wales councils and Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board, Appendix 2. Also, that the committee notes the agreed actions in the management response, Appendix 3, to address these recommendations and receives regular updates on the implementation of the actions going forward. Could I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Reese. Seconder. Ellie, thank you. And on that second recommendation, Lisa, I know you're not going to be with us long, but can we make sure that the regular updates on the implementation of the actions going forward do come back to this committee in the new council?
Barry?
Yes, Paul?
I did actually say that I was going to say something about that recommendation.
Sorry?
Regular updates doesn't say how often. And on page 19, there is a risk about officer capacity and time possibly delaying meeting the deadlines given. I just wonder whether that comment might influence the frequency with which this committee should get regular updates. Are we talking 6 monthly, annually, or what?
Bring Gary in there, Paul.
What I suggest, Chair, is that officers suggest when the first update can come, and then I think you need to judge having that when you need the next one, because I think if you just set sort of a frequency, it doesn't necessarily the committee agendas do get quite clogged up, and if you have a regular frequency, it would be better if you get an update and then decide on the basis of that update when you want the next update, if you like. So the thing to do would probably be to identify when it would be appropriate to bring the first update and then work from there.
Okay, Gary.
But yeah, would it be Lisa to be able to look at when the first update would come to the new?
I think, sorry, Chair, to interrupt. I think it would be for the service, if you like, because it's an update on the implementation of the actions, isn't it? So I think it would be for the service to, if you like, looking at the action plan to give you a date when a first update should come back.
Smashing, Gary. Could David or Nicola give us some guidance?
Chair, obviously the response is a North Wales response, so it is it's been formulated across the 6 local authorities and the health board, and within the governance structure it is the North Wales Commissioning Board that will hold this and will ensure that this is followed. So if it's okay with you, Chair, I will go back to the Commissioning Board and ask them for some kind of indication of timescales, and I can feed that through on a note to members.
Thanks, Nick. I think that's only fair. You happy with that, Paul?
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Nicola. Bobby, we did.
Yeah, can I apologise, Chair, because my internet went down, so I've been out for 5 minutes, but I'm back now. But I just wanted to make a point on before we leave this topic altogether, that there is currently a radical review taking place of RPBs, which includes the funding, which will move from ICF to our RIF. Which is regional integrated funding, and the whole point of bringing together health, 6 local authorities, the private sector, the voluntary sector, is to try and make new models of integrated care to give us a seamless service across the 700,000 people across North Wales. The Health Minister has indicated a more steady budget, shall we say, a 5-year budget, as opposed to, piecemeal budget of 144 million per year for 5 years. So this should help the situation. But I just wanted to make that sort of overall known in terms of what we're doing here in Denbighshire and in North Wales is part of a big new plan to try and improve the collaboration and the working together between all those people that give anybody who needs any sort of healthcare or social care a better service. So I guess in a nutshell, that's what it's all about.
Thank you, Bobby. Before we move on to the next agenda item, Lisa, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to suggest that this be included in the forward work programme and date to be confirmed, just so that it's not lost along the way with the change in committee. Yeah.
Thank you. We have had the recommendation, we have had the proposal and a seconder. So if we move on then to agenda item number 6. This is the Constitution update, pages 89 to 126, to receive a report on the update required to the Constitution as a result of the changes to legislation. Bring in Gary.
Thank you, Chair. I realised you were really keen to get this in before the last one because it's such an exciting report. It basically, the report sets out the legal position that the Local Government Act 2000 requires every council to have a constitution, and the Local Government and Elections Wales Act has made a number of changes to the law relating to local authorities which require changes to the constitution. The other piece of law that affects our constitution is the County of Denbighshire Electoral Arrangements Order, which was made following the Boundary and Democracy, whatever their name is at the minute, sorry, Commission's review of electoral arrangements for Denbighshire. So under the terms of the Constitution, the monitoring officer's got delegated authority to make changes that are required to comply with legal provisions and any decisions that have been made by Council or Cabinet. So the main changes that have been made by the 2021 Act are set out in paragraph 4.4 of the report, and they're reflected in the appendices. So what I propose to do, Chair, is to just take members through the appendices because it's probably easier just to see the changes in colour, if you like, and I can explain why those changes have been made. If you're happy for me to do that, then I'll move through.
Yes,
those.
thank you, Gary.
So if we turn to Appendix 1, which is on page 93, the Constitution sets out the number of councillors and how long they serve for, and the paragraph 1.1.1 there shows that the County Denbighshire Electoral Arrangements Order has changed the number of councillors from May this year rather, from 47 that we currently have to 48. There's an extra councillor for RIL. And the Local Government and Elections Wales Act has changed the statutory term for councillors from 4 years to 5 years. You serve 5 years in this term, you serve 5 years in the previous term, but the law actually required a 4-year term unless it was changed by regulation. What this does is just makes the 5-year cycle the default cycle. If we move on to Appendix 2, there's part of Appendix 2 contains a number of definitions of terms that are used within the Constitution. And I'll just check that members see this in red, because for some reason, when the documents have been converted, some things have appeared in blue and some things have appeared in red, but they appear in red there. So wherever there's a different color change, that's where a change has been made. So you'll see that the first new definition relates to chief executive. Effectively, what the 2021 Act did was remove the requirement for local authorities to have a head of paid service that was set out in the Local Government and Housing Act 1989, and replace that with chief executive, recognising that the head of paid service in the vast majority of council is called chief executive. And they introduced some statutory duties for the chief executive, which are set out later on in the Constitution, and I'll take you through those when we get to them. You'll see there a definition of a Constitution guide. The Act requires from May that every local authority has in ordinary language, a guide to the Constitution. So that's just defining what that is. And again, that's the subject of a separate report to the committee today. You'll see that under the next definition, corporate executive team, don't worry about the word executive in red. That's a formatting change that has caused that to be in red. The real difference is that we've changed the head of paid service to chief executive. And then you'll see that we've deleted reference to head of paid service on page 96. Page 97, we've changed the name of the Governance and Audit Committee and added the Welsh Language Steering Committee because that's been created since the Constitution was last updated. And we've got reference there to a petition scheme. The law requires that from May, we will have in place a petition scheme which sets out how we will deal with petitions. And that will be the subject of a report to council in May, but reference needs to be made to it in the Constitution. So we've defined it and put it into the Constitution. The single integrated plan is an out-of-date reference that's been deleted. And you'll see on page 99 that there's reference to the Constitution Guide to ensure that members of the public or anybody else indeed who's reading the Constitution has that as an aid to interpreting its provisions. If we move to page 101, Appendix 3, this part of the Constitution tells people how they can get involved. And the first way people can get involved is to vote at the elections. And clearly, the franchise has changed after the Local Government and Election Wales Act. So in local government elections, people aged 16 and above can vote. So there's just been a change to reflect that reference. And again, lower down on page 102, there's reference again to a petition scheme that will be brought to council in May. All these changes will take effect in the Constitution from May, and the Constitution as it currently is will remain on the website until then. Later on in Appendix 3, on page 103, again, there's just a change in the name of the committee, just to reflect the legal requirement. If we move on to page 105, we get into the part of the Constitution, section 4, that deals with full council, and it lists there a number of things that council has to approve. The Denbighshire Self-Assessment Report, the part 6 of the Local Government and Election Wales Act sets out, if you like, performance arrangements, and each authority has to produce a self-assessment each year, and that self-assessment has to be considered by this committee, but it has to ultimately be approved by the council, so that's been included. The reference to the pay policy statement is just to include that because it was omitted. That's not a change in the law, it's just there was an omission in the previous document. And again, you'll see that there's some minor changes there, just to change the reference to head of paid service to chief executive and to change the reference to the name of this committee. If we go to page 106, you'll see at paragraph G that, again, we've just made a change to the term of office of the leader, because the leader has always been elected for the council term, and that, of course, is now 5 years rather than 4. Then on page 107, Appendix 4, you'll see that we've made changes here to time and place of meetings, and it's just to reflect the fact that the law now requires that members must be able to attend meetings from wherever, so from a remote location. So the place of a meeting includes members who attend remotely. Again, there's a specific provision there to recognise that meetings may be attended remotely by people who are not in the same physical location. And again, there's reference to the broadcasting of meetings. Now, currently, the law only requires that we webcast council meetings. So that's the only reference in there. Clearly, we webcast more than that. We're webcasting this committee, and the majority of public meetings are webcast, and we'll be continuing to do that. But the Constitution is just setting out there what the legal requirement is. You'll see again on page 107 at paragraph 4.26. Again, these are just minor consequential amendments. So rather than the number of members voting and present in the room, we don't have a room anymore as such. So it will be numbers of members voting and present in the meeting. We've removed the reference to the record of attendance and signing an attendance sheet, because clearly people can't sign the sheet if they're not present in the same location. In terms of the next page, which is page 108, there's reference to, which is just a minor change. The rules say that people must stand if they speak. Well, clearly we'd have lots of screens full of pictures of people's navels if they were standing in front of their laptop. So that's just to make clear that that's just required if you're actually in the physical location of the meeting. The next set of changes on page 109, section 5, which relate to the cabinet. And these are probably the biggest, if you like, difference. Currently, the Constitution says that we have a cabinet of the leader plus 7 members to be appointed by the leader. The Act requires us to describe how job sharing arrangements could be accommodated for cabinet roles, and what size of cabinet would be allowed by law if those job sharing roles were introduced. So what the law currently says is you can have a cabinet of up to 10. What the law will say from May is that you can have a cabinet of up to 10, so the leader plus up to 9 others. However, we have to describe in our constitution what would happen if the leader appointed people to job share a cabinet role. So the law now allows the leader to appoint 2 people or more than 2 people to a single cabinet role. And what the law also says is that the total number of members of the cabinet can be 11 or 12, where at least 2 of them are elected or appointed to share office, and 13, where at least 3 of them are elected to share office. And we're required to reflect that in the Constitution. So it does not mean you have to have cabinet share roles. That will be a matter for whoever is elected as the leader. But we are obliged by law to describe that in the Constitution, and we're obliged by law to do that if the leader, whoever is elected, wishes to do that. Similarly, you'll see lower down on the page 5.3 relating to the leader, it is now possible for 2 or more councillors to stand together as joint leaders. So when the council in May is asked to elect a leader, it will be possible for 2 or more councillors to stand on one ticket, if you like, to be joint leader. So again, it's not a requirement that people do that, but we have to describe in the Constitution the fact that they can if they want to. And what the law is clear on is that those people have to stand as joint leaders. It can't be that 2 or more people all stand individually for leader, one of them wins and then says, well, why don't we share it? You've got to stand as a joint leader. Similarly, we just have to reflect in terms of deputy leader that 2 or more councillors can be appointed to share that role. And again, show that 2 or more councillors can be appointed to share the office of cabinet member. And then in terms of the quorum for a cabinet on the next page, which is page 110, it reflects, first of all, in A, the fact that cabinet members can attend remotely, so they will count as a quorum even if they're not in the physical location of the meeting. But what it also describes is what the law says about cabinet job sharers in a quorum. So if you have, for example, 2 members who share a cabinet role, if one of them is at a meeting, they count as 1 for the quorum. If they're both at a meeting, they still only count as 1 for the quorum. So we just have to describe that in the Constitution. Again, it doesn't mean you have to have cabinet job sharers, it just means we have to describe it in the Constitution. And then, as I've already explained on page 111, 2 or more councillors can be elected as joint leader where they've made an arrangement to do so. Appendix 7 on page 113, there's an amendment here relating to joint scrutiny committees. Previously, the reference was that under section 58 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011, 2 or more authorities could decide between themselves to appoint a joint scrutiny committee, and we have done. We've got a joint scrutiny committee for the Public Service Board with Conway. The law was slightly changed. Section 58 has been amended by the 2021 Act to say that we still can choose to do that, but Welsh ministers have now got a reserved power to require local authorities to make a joint scrutiny committee. So there are no regulations yet, but that power does exist. And so we've just reflected that in the description of joint scrutiny committees in the Constitution. Is everybody still with me, or has everybody lost the will to live yet? If I go on to Appendix 8, the Standards Committee, the 2021 Act has introduced new provisions which confer new obligations upon the Standards Committee. So in terms of 8.6.12 there, the 2021 Act will introduce from May a legal duty for the leaders of political groups to promote and maintain high standards of conduct amongst the members of their group. And it also imposes on the Standards Committee an obligation to monitor the compliance by group leaders with that duty, to provide advice and training or arrange for training of leaders of political groups in respect of those duties. And you'll see lower down at 8.8 that the committee will now be required to make an annual report to the council in accordance with the provisions of the Act. Now, our Standards Committee already does an annual report, which has just been seen as good practice. It's now a legal requirement, but also it will be a legal obligation that that annual report contains some comment about the effectiveness of group leaders in discharging their duty around conduct within their groups. If we then go on to Appendix 9 on page 117, this appendix reflects the part of the Constitution that describes this committee. And you'll see that we've changed the name, but also the law requires from May that the membership of the committee is different. So it says now that the committee must have 2/3 of its membership comprised of elected councillors and 1/3 of lay persons. So at the moment, we're required to have at least one lay member. But in the new arrangements after May, we must have 1/3 of lay persons. And there's a further report on that on the agenda today. It also sets out there at 9.2.2 that the chair of the Governance and Audit Committee must be a lay person. So effectively, the position is that membership will be 2/3, 1/3. The committee will elect its own chair, but it can only elect a chair from within the cohort of lay persons. There are other amendments to the terms of reference of this committee, which for some reason haven't been replicated in the appendix. I apologise for that. But effectively what they are that under the Local Government and Elections Wales Act, under the performance requirements, I stated earlier that the council will be required to produce a self-assessment report in respect of its performance and governance. And there is a statutory role for this committee in receiving that report and in making comments on that report, which have to be taken into account by council. There will also once in each term be a requirement for there to be a panel assessment of people external to the council who are appointed to a panel. And again, this committee has a statutory role in receiving that draft report and commenting on it, and those comments having to be taken into account. The way that it's described in the amendment to the Constitution is that the committee will discharge its functions under, I think it's Part 6 of the Local Government and Election Wales Act in respect to the performance arrangements. There's another change to the terms of reference for the committee as well, in that the committee will now have a function of monitoring the complaints system and reviewing and assessing the effectiveness of the complaint system. And again, you've got a report in respect of the complaint system later on your agenda. Appendix 10 is the part that deals with joint committees. So we just made reference there to the Economic Ambition Board because that exists as a joint committee. The contracting out provision, you can ignore. That's just a formatting thing because it's changed in the order of things. That was always there and it's still there. 10.7, we just setting out, if you like, the fact that corporate joint committees are a thing, that they've been created by law, and it describes there the process by which a corporate joint committee can be established. And we then get to Appendix 11. And here on page 121 onwards, we've just made changes that reflect the provisions of the Act, which remove the role of head of paid service and replace it with a chief executive. And the main substantive change there is at the bottom of page 121, and then the first half of page 122. It sets out that the chief executive has certain legal obligations or duties that have been created by the Act, and they're set out there, and they are things you'd expect the chief executive to be doing anyway, but they're set out in law. That the chief exec will keep under review the manner in which the discharge of the council's functions is coordinated, the arrangements in relation to financial planning, asset management and risk management, the number and grade of staff required for the discharge of those functions, and the organisation, appointment and arrangements for management of the council staff. And again, the chief executive has the authority to make reports to council in respect of any of those things. So those are, if you like, a codification of what chief executives should be doing. And then the remaining changes in that appendix are really just name changes. So we remove, find and replace head of paid service with chief executive. That is a very quick, even if it didn't feel like it, trot through the changes that have been made to the Constitution. And again, they're the bare minimum changes that need to be made to comply with the law. There will need to be further work done in the new council about a review generally of the Constitution, because there are some things in the Act which councils may choose to do, and it may be that once the new council's in place, it may want to take a view as to whether or not it wants to introduce some of those things. The most obvious would be the role of assistance to the executive. So the way the Act describes it is that we can, but we don't have to describe in our Constitution arrangements by which a new role called assistant to the executive can be created. And assistants to the executive are not members of the executive, so they're not members of the cabinet, but they can be appointed to a role to assist the cabinet or the executive, but they then can't be part of the scrutiny apparatus or structure. So there's a decision for the council to make about numbers and etc. But that's not really for now, that's for the new council, and it's not a legal requirement to have it, it's just an option. Happy to answer any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Gary. Many changes coming. I won't say our way because it depends if we get voted in again. But it's coming our way for the new council. Ellie, you're on.
I was first. My question to Gary, I think, because I quite like constitutions, only because I've been involved with voluntary groups for donkey's years and spent many a time in the kitchen typing out constitutions. My question is, Appendix 3, where is the petition scheme? And I didn't see it anywhere else, but maybe I missed it, Gary. So just want to know.
Okay, thank you, Ellie.
Yeah, sorry, Ellie, the petition scheme will be drafted and brought to council in May.
Fine.
We're just making reference to it in the Constitution because from May it needs to be referred to in the Constitution.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Gary. Martin.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question of 8.61, where we now say any member of the Standards Committee can attend the full council, cabinet and scrutiny committees. Can I just ask for a point of clarification? Will they be allowed to speak and ask questions? And also, what about the audit committee lay members? Do they have the same right to attend those meetings because one could argue that perhaps they should more so than the Standards Committee, because they're actually monitoring the finances and the function of the council. And finally, on that point, I'm assuming that if they can attend all these committees, cabinet and full council, that they can claim attendance allowance. Thank you.
I'll bring Gary in. Thank you, Martin.
Well, that's not a change to the Constitution. That's always been there. Members of the Standards Committee, part of their role is to observe conduct generally across the authority. To be perfectly honest, they've concentrated more on town and community councils and have been visiting town and community councils for a number of years now, and do so on a voluntary basis. But yes, members of the Standards Committee, as could a lay member of a lay person on the Governance and Audit Committee, could attend and observe. It is to attend and observe. They wouldn't have any automatic right to speak at any of those meetings unless invited to do so. And in terms of the attendance allowance, clearly we'd want to be managing that. And what one of the aspects, which is not directly relevant to this report, but of the review of the ethical framework that's just been conducted by Richard Penn on behalf of Welsh Government, and which Welsh Government are currently considering, one of the recommendations in there is that there should be an increase in the profile of standards committees, and that they should be, if you like, more high profile within the council. And given that they will be required to advise and train group leaders in respect of the new duty about the maintenance of conduct in groups, then it may well be there'll be a greater requirement for them to observe meetings, just to observe conduct, etc.
Okay, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. Any other members? I don't see any other hands. Because we have a member just outside the country want to ask a question. Just before that, I'd like to ask a question myself. We've mentioned earlier on about hybrid meetings and not having to sign attendance sheets. How will the council report to the public at the end of the year members' attendance at meetings?
We'll still be able to record members' attendance because the system will show us who's in attendance at a meeting from the hybrid system, and we will still be reporting members' attendance as we do now on the website.
Thanks very much, Gary. Okay, Merrick, you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I take it that the translation is available, yeah? It is. Thank you very much. But I thank you, first of all, Gary, and the department for excellent work. It's not easy to amend anything, especially when it's an act of the land in this manner. Could I thank you, Gary, and the department for very thorough work, fair play, and presenting it excellently as you usually do. If I could turn to page 102. 3218. Ellie has mentioned this already. So you'll be setting out a petition to be filled, as completed by the new council. When the new council has convened, the forms will be ready to go out to people, or for people to access them on the internet and fill them. That's one question. Second question is 107, page 107, 427. We say now that we don't need to sign that we're in the chamber, correct? But how do we know who is in the building if we've, come to the chamber itself? In terms of fire regulations, are we still having to sign the book if we're there or not? In the flesh, as it were. Do we need to sign anything to say, yeah, we're in the building? Look for me if there's a fire. And the second one I have in this section 109, 5.5.2 on page 109 in English, he/she is removed from that office by the leader upon such notice. The leader, does that leader mean two who in holding the same post? Further up, it says the post can be shared. Do you not have to put leaders there? Matter of English linguistics there, no, and I know you're an expert in that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Merrick. I'll bring Gary in.
Diolch, Merrick.
Thank you, Mary. I will try and respond in Welsh, and when I'm stuck, I will turn to English. So about the plan with the petition, it'll be necessary for the council to have a petition plan and for us to put that out on the internet for everybody to be able to see how to present a petition to the council and what the council will do with that petition. So that will come to the council in May. About the point about 5.5.2. Yeah, you'll still need to sign to access the building, for health and safety reasons. But regarding there were members' forms to be signed in the chamber when they attended a meeting. Well, we will still collect details of who is physically in the building and at the meeting. But we can't get everybody who's in the meeting to sign the form because some of them will be attending the meeting remotely from home or work or elsewhere. About the final question to do with the leader, that's a good point, Mary, and I think that what we will do is we will add an additional definition in section 2 to make it clear wherever we name the leader in the documents that the leader also includes individual leader or joint leader, or more than one person. So we will add something in section 2 as a definition. Excellent, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Gary. You come over excellently.
Thank you, Merrick. Thank you, Gary. Okay, members, moving on to the recommendations. And the recommendation that the committee notes the changes required to the constitution as set out in the appendices to the report. Can I have Ellie, approve, and seconder? Yes, Martin, thank you. Moving on then to agenda item number 7, bringing Gary again. The Constitution Guide on pages 127 to 172 to receive a report on the ordinary language guide to the Constitution. Gary?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the Act requires that from May we have an ordinary language guide to the Constitution, which is supposed to make it easier for officers, members of the public to be able to understand different bits of the Constitution. I mean, traditionally, the Constitution has been written in a very legalistic type way, so that hopefully only the lawyers understand what it says, and therefore it means whatever they say it means. But those days are gone. So we got an ordinary language guide to the Constitution, which is supposed to set out, if you like, the sorts of circumstances that we envisage people might want to use the Constitution. So, can I speak at a council meeting? How does the cabinet make decisions? Those sorts of questions you'll see in the appendix set out. And the idea is that there is a brief description of how those things happen, and then a reference to the relevant bit of the Constitution. So you'll see in the document references to hyperlinks to be inserted. So what we'll do is once the document is finalized, we'll insert all the relevant hyperlinks so that a member of the public who goes onto the website, looks at the guide, can see a brief description of the answer to their question, and then they can click on the relevant link, which will take them through to the relevant bit, and they don't have to plow through 400 pages of Constitution to find the bit that they want. The Act says that we should have regard to statutory guidance in respect of the guide to the Constitution. That statutory guidance hasn't yet been published, but we do have to have these in place in May. We've had sight of the draft statutory guidance, and the draft statutory guidance recommends that authorities should use the model guide to the Constitution that's been prepared by the Welsh Local Government Association in accordance with a body called Lawyers in Local Government. And the document that you have is the model guide to the Constitution, just amended to suit the Denbighshire Constitution, so to make sure the relevant references are correct. There are a couple of what I would have liked to have claimed were deliberate mistakes in the document, but they are actually mistakes in the model. And that is at page, they've been pointed out to me very helpfully by the Vice Chair, but so at page 138, part 2, there's still a reference to councillors being elected every 4 years, and it should be 5 years. And then in the reference to the Democratic Services Committee, which I will just try and find the page number for, on page 148, at the bottom of page 148, it says that the Democratic Services Committee is responsible for appointing the head of Democratic Services. Well, that's not technically correct. What the law says is that the Democratic Services Committee needs to approve the designation of someone as head of Democratic Services. So head of Democratic Services for these purposes is a designation. It can be people in existing roles can be designated the head of Democratic Services. So the Democratic Services Committee doesn't appoint people, but it does approve the designation. So that just needs to be amended. The other thing that members will note is that there is a structure diagram that's required to go into the document. That's at page, bear with me, page 139. All that is a structure diagram of the various committees of the authority. So it will have depicted in a diagram the council, the cabinet, the committees that are exercising functions on behalf of council, such as planning and licensing, the committees of the cabinet, any joint committees that we have with other authorities. It will set out the scrutiny structure and the role of this committee, and it will also have a small structure diagram of statutory officers. That's not there now just because my technical abilities failed me due to on the deadline of producing it, but there will be a pictorial representation of the committee structure in the final document. And this will be presented to council in May, if members are okay with it, for it just to be approved by council.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions, members? I think it's self-explanatory. Paul?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Gary, I'm looking at pages 22 to 30, and in specifically references at different points to councillors and members. Now, on page 95 of the previous item, there were definitions, and that specifically said what a councillor was, or who a councillor is, and who a member is, taking account of lay members. There's no such definition in this constitution guide. They are different, and yet it seems to me that between pages 22 and 30, they've been used as synonyms. I just thought I'd draw that to your attention.
Thank you, Paul. That's a good point. And what I'll do is I'll go through there and just see whether or not a definition would assist. There isn't one in the model. This is the model document, but I can always insert something extra into the model document. So I'll have a look at whether or not it needs any extra definition before it goes to council in May.
Thank you, Gary.
Just Chair, one other comment on report page 23, agenda page 154. There's apparently a member champion. I never knew that.
No, that's not a champion for members. That's
oh, I'm a member. All right.
sorry. Yeah, we have different champion roles. So we have homelessness champion, older persons champion, etc. So there's a role description for those member champions. It's not that there's a member champion.
Oh, I see. Okay.
We will have 48 member champions.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, cheers, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Gary.
Any more questions, members, before I move out to member not in the committee? No? Okay, Mary?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, once again. Just to ask Gary very kindly, and thank you again for this document. In English, it's in English. We aren't able to see the Welsh one until it's been completed, finished. Yep, that's fine, no problem with that. But I feel that we should get have a look over the document when it's been translated in the Welsh Language Steering Committee. Sometimes when things as technical as this is translated, there are occasional slips that come in. I don't know whether Gary concurs, but I don't want to keep it back. That's not what I'm saying, but that it's able to go to the steering committee in the first instance, as it's called, the Welsh Language Steering Committee, to look over it and just to make sure that the translation is as good, if not better, than the English version. Thank you. I think that's a good idea. Especially as this document is to be of assistance to members of the public to make sure that they understand what's in the Constitution. We want to make sure that it's a very good point that we do make sure that people who read the document in Welsh, that they get the same type of explanation of the Constitution as they would get in the English.
Okay, thanks, Gary. Okay, Mary?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then, members, moving on to the recommendation. And recommendations is 3.1, that the committee considers the contents of the guide to the Constitution attached as Appendix 1 and recommends to the council that it be adopted. Could I have a proposer and a seconder? A proposer, Rees, seconded by Martin. Thank you. Moving on then, members. Gary's going to lose his voice. Agenda item number 8 is lay members of governance and audit committee, pages 173, to receive a report on the need to recruit lay members to sit on the committee following the local government elections in May 2022. Gary.
Thank you, Chair. I promise I'll be quiet after this. This is the last one in my run of reports. This is effectively, we've touched upon this in the Constitution update. The law requires that 1/3 of the membership of the Governance and Audit Committee must be lay persons, and there's a new definition of lay persons that's set out in 4.1 of the report. We have participated in a nationwide advertising campaign that was assisted by the Welsh Local Government Association, where they provided sort of template adverts, etc., and advertisements were placed for people who are interested in becoming laypersons. And we have had applicants who have responded to that advertisement. What we now need to do is to shortlist and interview applicants. And in 2012, the council delegated that task to this committee. It doesn't mean it has to be every member of the committee, but we just need to form a panel from this committee. And what that committee will do is it will shortlist and interview applicants and then make recommendations to council in May for council to appoint those persons to those vacancies. In terms of the number of vacancies, we will need 3 laypersons on the committee. We have a layperson already, Paul Witham, who has indicated that he would be happy to continue should the council choose to do that. And therefore we would be asking that a panel look to recruit 2 additional laypersons, and we take a report to council in May to confirm those appointments.
Could I ask Gary how many members you would require for the?
I think we'd probably need a minimum of 3 for there to be a panel, and I think what we would propose, Lisa hopefully agrees, is that we would identify suitable dates depending on members' availability, and then assemble a panel from that in order that we could just hold the interviews. We don't have a large number of applicants. It's not going to be that onerous yet. So it would just be to, we will prepare all the interview questions, etc., and then it will be for members to hear those people who interview and make a recommendation to council.
Thank you, Gary. I was going to say questions. Martin, you've had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just ask, where were these advertised, actually, Gary, please? Where were they advertised?
That's a really good question, Martin, and Lisa did the work. Lisa was really good in organising this, so I'll ask Lisa to remind me as well as answer your question.
Yeah, it is a very good question. The WLGA coordinated it, and I understand it was in some national newspapers such as The Guardian and some other popular newspapers like that, which is why they coordinated it, because we wouldn't have been able to afford that type of publicity just for Denbighshire, I don't think, in the budget. And then I coordinated with our comms team as well to make sure that locally there was some advertising using our usual channels. So that would be Twitter and things like that. The Welsh Government and WLGA also had the adverts on their website, and they circulated it through their usual networking channels as well. So
could I ask if somebody could clarify which newspapers they were advertised in, please? That would be useful. Thank you very much.
I'll find out and I'll share the information with you by email.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa. Thank you, Martin. Anyone else want to come in? If no, Merrick.
Diolch i chi am yr ateb,
Thank you for the answer, Lisa. But in general, I wonder why we as councillors don't get to know about these things, that we have to read pages, of advertisements to get to find something. Well, about the this campaign, Local Governments Association of Wales (LGA) prepared a plan of a scheme of advertisements to make sure that that it was consistent over Wales, to make sure that all authorities got that people coming forward. So we, in effect, we just took part in the scheme that the LGA had set out for us.
Okay, Merrick.
Well, the only reason for asking, with all due respect, Mr. Chairman, was that perhaps if we might know if somebody would be suitable and not seen the advertisements. We do get a lot of information from the councils they play, and there's an internal newsletter that goes to the workforce and so forth. But I think it would be of assistance, as you said. Councillor Holland has asked, where are they advertised? We have a copy, or put something up on the on the newsletters that we get, or the letters that the new councillors will now, not us, of course, for them to know, oh, well, this has gone out. Oh, maybe so and so would be interested, and maybe they'd missed it, hadn't seen it. It's not quite often that people read, all of everything that comes from the council, say that this road is going to be cut, whatever, or that type of adverts. That'd be that type of adverts to some degree. You need to understand the paper every single day for every single week, to make sure that you don't miss them. So, but if you were to let councillors know, then they would be able to possibly, offer, or or not offer, suggest, but let somebody know. Do you fancy going for this? That's all it was. That's fair enough. Yeah, that's fair enough.
Thank you, Merrick. Members, moving on to the recommendations at 3.1, that the committee confirms that it will appoint from its membership a panel to shortlist and interview candidates for the role of laypersons onto this committee. Could you have a proposal, please? Thank you, Ellie. I know you're struggling there to get your hand up, but you're going to. And Martin has seconded. Thank you.
What we'll do, Chair, is we'll circulate appropriate dates and we'll see which members are available and we'll convene a panel from there.
Sorry, Mr. Kadiri.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just ask, do you need to put you talked about 3 members, possibly? I don't think that, or just leave it to the officers. I think that it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary if all committees, all the committee members are happy to take part on any single date, you know, that's fine. But I think I'd want to have at least 3.
Okay with that, Mary? Thank you, Gary.
Mr. Kadiri, is daar geen happy?
Chairman, if you're happy, yeah. You haven't included it in the recommendations. That's why I was asking. Yeah.
Happy with that. Moving on then to agenda item number 9, which is the internal update on pages 177 to 204, to consider a report by the head of internal audit, updating members on the internal audit progress. Lisa?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is the standard report that's presented. The last update came in November 2021, and so this is an update on internal audit progress since then. There's also been a number of changes to affecting the internal audit service, so I've just provided a summary of that as well. So I'll just go through the key items in Appendix 1. Bear with me. So starting on page 183, there's a summary there in the table of the audits that have been completed since our last update. So there's 5 in total, and 1 follow-up review. The 5 audits have all been awarded a medium or high assurance rating. And the follow-up, which was of accommodation provision for the homeless, was awarded a low assurance, and that's been presented to partnership scrutiny in December already. So at a previous meeting from this committee, it was decided to revert the ongoing monitoring of that follow-up to partnership scrutiny. So it's presented here for information. So if I just pick out some key points from some of those audits I think might be of interest to yourselves. The governance and decision-making audit raised a number of issues, but provided a medium assurance rating overall. It looked at the decision-making structure and process around transparency and scrutiny of delegated decisions by lead members and chief officers. And it also looked at decision-making that took place during the COVID-19 pandemic, where emergency decision-making arrangements were put in place. The review broadly finds that governance arrangements work well. There's opportunity to learn from the COVID-19 pandemic to look at quicker decision-making, but also needing to maintain that transparency and accountability for the decision making. There's documented guidance in place within the Constitution, which you're all very familiar with now after Gary's update. One thing that we did raise there, which Gary's already presented, is clearer guidance around the Constitution so that officers as well as members of the public are familiar with key areas where they need to, particularly around decision making and delegated decisions. It is a lengthy document, and so some additional guidance around responsibilities like that would be helpful. Sample testing of delegated decisions made by lead members was positive overall. So decisions are published on the website, which gives that transparency, but it wasn't always clear around the supporting evidence around the approvals for that. So that's something that we've highlighted. Chief officer delegated decisions isn't as clear, so we've just raised an issue around that to make that a bit more transparent, but also clearer for call in should that be required. Then overall, the decision taken during the COVID-19 pandemic was found to be well recorded. There was only 2 key decisions made by the leader during that time, and the cabinet members informed that decision. And then feedback from heads of services and lead members was positive overall around decision making within the council. And there were examples of good practice as well as understanding where lessons could be learned, which was good to hear. And there's good level of engagement, both informally and formally, between members and officers. We did highlight a potential capacity issue within democratic services to be able to carry out some of the improvements required. That's something that Audit Wales highlighted in their review in 2018. At the time of our audit, there was a business case to request additional resources within that team to be able to help with this type of matters that we raised. Then the school audits, both high assurance provided for Real High and Ysgol Llanfair Dyffryn Clwyd. We've had to do things a bit differently with schools, given the pressures that they're under. So we've undertaken the audit remotely using a self-assessment. And that's been appreciated by schools, but it does mean that we haven't been able to undertake certain checks that we would normally in terms of financial arrangements and stuff and things like that. So there are some limitations to the scope and coverage. So I'll just make that clear. But general findings are things like governor training and DBS checks, the type of things that we're finding during those audits. But overall, very good arrangements in place at the schools and responded well to the pressures that the pandemic has affected them. Additional learning needs is around the implementation in response to the new code and statutory guidance. It's a very early stage in that implementation, and our review was very positive overall in terms of the progress that was being undertaken. We plan to carry out a further review of that in the future and to give the chance for implementation to progress. Housing repairs and maintenance. We raised 1 major issue and 3 moderate and provided a medium assurance overall. They noted some positive aspects in terms of the response to COVID and some arrangements that they've had to adapt at speed in response to that, in terms of being able to enter people's homes to carry out repairs and things like that. But key issue that we have raised is around their open housing system, which is a new IT system that's been implemented. And a number of issues with that in terms of its functionality, which the service was aware of and was taking steps to try and remediate. This was causing inaccurate and unreliable data, and which was both the system and user error was the cause of that. Another issue was raised around modernising the service, which has been a plan and an aim for some time, and there's an outstanding resolution of the current 9-day fortnight working patterns for operatives, which has affected some of the aspirations for modernising the service, and that's still underway. A couple of the other things that we've raised is around the inspection process over repairs could be improved to ensure that safety and standard of the repairs are carried out. And also around recharging for repairs of a certain type. That's something that's within the tenant's handbook, as the council can recharge for certain repairs carried out, but isn't something that is taking place at the moment. So it's just to service to consider that and look at what revenue is potentially missing out from not chasing those costs. Given that we've raised a major risk issue in relation to the open housing system, we have scheduled to carry out a follow-up of this area. And that's something that's scheduled for September 2022. I don't plan to go through the homelessness follow-up because that's already been discussed by partnership scrutiny, but members might want to question certain aspects from that. In terms of progress in delivering the internal audit assurance on page 194 and 195, I've just highlighted a number of key changes to internal audit. First of all, the head of business improvement and modernisation, Alan Smith, is due to retire next week. And so there's interim arrangements that have been put in place whilst a wider SLT restructure is taking place. So Alan's role's effectively been split in two, and there's two section heads that have been, who are existing managers within the service. So Nicola Neal, who's a manager for strategic planning and performance, is one of the section heads, and Barry Eaton, the head of ICT, is one of the other section heads. And so Nicola now has responsibility for project management, performance, as well as internal audit, whilst the wider SLT restructure progresses and takes place. There's interim leadership for these section heads will be provided by Liz Grieve, head of customers and marketing, and that's due to the vacant director role, which was Graham Bose's previous role as a director of economic and public realm. As I said, that's for the interim period, and the SLT restructure is due to be completed in the autumn. The internal audit charter will need to obviously pick up on these changes, and that will come to the committee in June 2022. And for myself and for yourselves, it's just satisfying the fact that internal audit maintains its independence and objectivity given these changes, particularly around reporting lines. And the Chief Internal Auditor already has a direct reporting line to the chair of this committee, and that's a key aspect to maintain independence. But I also have a reporting line to the Chief Executive and to Steve Gadd as a Section 151 officer. So if there was any undue influence, there's an opportunity to flag that up through those channels. And then moving on to the second key change, we have created a principal auditor role within the team, which was something that I have felt a need to bring us in line with the other teams in Wales, which is a more senior role to the senior auditors that we have at the moment. And it's a position that can act as the deputy to the Chief Internal Auditor and also assist with some of the more complex and contentious audits that we have in the plan, which is more strategic in nature. So Bob Chowdhury, who's in the meeting, has been appointed from within the team into that role. And that brings me on, Bob, as you remember, he's been working with the Test, Trace and Protect team for a couple of years. So he's due to rejoin us on the 4th of April. And still need to keep his hand in, I think, with the Track and Trace to make sure that that's been able to, but I understand that's starting to sort of quieten down in some effect. So just making sure that, touch wood, that carries on and completes his role there. Brings me on to the next change in the fact that I will be leaving the council on the 4th of April. So after 5 years nearly in this role and 18 years working for Dempshire, it's going to be quite a change for me to leave, I think. But I've been scheduled to have some handover meetings with Bob Chowdhury, so he will be acting up in my absence. And my successor, there is intention to appoint someone into this role, and I understand that's currently been advertised. So once that role is filled, the internal audit team should be back to a full complement. So yeah. In terms of implementing the internal audit plan, there have been some impacts due to whistleblowing things that we've had to investigate, but on the current trajectory, we're in a much better position to where we were last year. And some key audits that are left to complete in this quarter, which we're always under pressure to finish those off at this time of year. And so it's all hands on deck to complete those assurances, particularly with the financial systems, which I understand that finance have been under some pressure with external audits and timeframes and things like that. So we are trying to deliver what we need to be able to provide the assurances that we need for the annual governance statement. I won't go through the table, but that does show from pages 196 to 198 the status of all our audits. And on page 199, just lists some of the audits that have either been put on hold or deferred and the reasons for that. These are either due to the fact that we can derive from assurances from elsewhere, such as Audit Wales, so there's no requirements for us to duplicate that work, or there has been changes to legislation, such as the liberty protection safeguards. It's delayed on some of the guidance for that, so we've agreed to postpone that audit to await the new legislation guidance. In terms of progress with counter fraud work on page 200, I've just listed some of the things that we've been involved with. It's very much been a focus for our team, particularly with all the changes that are going on, just to provide advice where new things are coming in, such as the Levelling Up Fund, which is a lot of money coming in, and new arrangements for that. So services are very good at coming to audit and asking for advice. The National Fraud Initiative data matches, we're closing down a number of the reports now. There was a new match on business rates from the COVID-19 business rate grants. While the NFI didn't produce any meaningful matches of fraud, the service checks within the service themselves have identified potential fraud in terms of duplicate claims, and where this has been the case, they've been able to take action. And we have informed the National Anti-Fraud Network as well, due to certain attempts have been made to get money fraudulently. I won't go through the other ones, but those are the key things I wanted to mention. Referrals from 21-22, I've just summarised on page 201. There have been potential fraud allegations which have all come through whistleblowing concerns raised, and all three investigations have been concluded by our service in terms of our involvement, and the outcome involves disciplinary action, which is ongoing. One employee had been dismissed, and there's recommendations for internal controls to be either put in place or strengthened as a result of that review. I won't go into the detail of those because they're all whistleblowing concerns. They will come to the committee as part of the annual whistleblowing report as a part 2 item. I think that's everything from that report I wanted to highlight. Of course, if there's any questions, then I'll hopefully be able to answer those.
Thanks, Lisa. Take a drink, love. Your voice is going. Okay, members. Martin, you've got your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. First and foremost, I know you're going to thank Lisa, but can I personally thank Lisa for all our hard work. You know, as you all know, the chair and the vice chair, of course, always meet before these meetings, and Lisa prepares the invitations for that and gets us there and guides us. And, you know, we actually have to be very careful at pre-meeting, I hasten to add, because you tend to ask the questions that you want to ask in the committee itself. But I'm very grateful, as I know Barry will be, for Lisa's support and guidance in those meetings, as well as, you know, as an auditor in these meetings. So, you know, thank you very much, Lisa, and I wish you well. But then I'm going to come with some questions, if I may. Obviously the housing repair inspections, I'm assuming that that's more to do with COVID than anything else, and that we will see an improvement in that area as, you know, COVID restrictions disappear. One of the things I was interested to see was the tenant's handbook, which gives rechargeable repairs. I wonder in some ways whether councillors should have a copy of that, because often they're giving guidance to tenants when they come and say there's something wrong with my house. And it would be an idea if councillors could actually say, well, actually, that particular item, you will have a recharge on that one. So that's a, you know, thought for the future. But obviously collecting the money that's rechargeable seems to be a problem. And do we have a major problem with tenants who are leaving? For example, if tenants leave, then we have to revamp their houses and repair them. Are we recharging where we should be for those activities, and are we getting the money back after the tenant's gone? That comes to mind. The only other one I think really in my list is I notice we've got quite a low rating for something called exceptions, variations from CPRS. 4 major issues. I just wonder if you could remind us what that is, what department or what area that is. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Lisa?
Yeah, I'll ask the service to circulate the tenant's handbook for members' information. Excuse me. Recharging where they should be when the council undertakes some void repairs to bring housing up to standards as a matter of course. So that is something that the council would pay for, but there are certain repairs that are carried out, such as intentional damage to doors or something like that, that should be charged for, and that's in the tenant's handbook, but it's not something that has taken place for some time. The service was aware of it, and there is something that they are planning to carry out an assessment in terms of potential lost revenue from not pursuing those charges. And then your question around exemptions and variations from CPRs. Yeah, this was a report that was brought to the committee in January, and I'd have to refresh myself as well in terms of the 4 issues that were raised. Gary might remember a bit more than I do, but I think it was similarities with a contract management audit. But I can circulate, yeah, it's just keeping track of all the audits, and my memory at the moment is.
I think we are both are suffering from the same memory losses there, Lisa, but thanks for that. You just clarified where it's come from. Now I remember.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Thanks, Lisa. Paul, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, just to say and echo Martin's thoughts. Well done, and thanks for all the work you've done and the relationship that's been built up. It's been good and grateful. One specific though on this particular report, the homeless follow-up. Can we be assured that it's not, because it's been presented and commented on by partnership scrutiny, can we be assured that it's not going to drop off the internal audit plan that's presented to governance and audit? The reason I ask is it's the first one that I can ever remember, the first internal audit report that I can ever remember actually going to another scrutiny committee. and I've got no problem in sharing it. I just think that at the end of the day, we've got the ultimate responsibility as part of the big picture. That was all. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul. And I've seen Lisa nodding there that it won't be lost on this committee.
No, my intention is that this internal audit update will continue to summarise the results of any follow-ups, so that committee still has the opportunity to ask questions, which rightfully they should, in terms of that the action plan is being addressed. Just to comment that there is good progress being made, and scrutiny did ask some very good questions there, and you, of course you've got the link with Councillor Rhys Thomas providing some scrutiny there as well, so which is good.
Cheers. Gwyneth.
Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Thank you very much. First of all, Lisa, could I wish you all the best on your retirement. I've known you for many years, so all the best to you. It'll be a great loss to the council as you go. And secondly, I heard Lisa saying something about that there's a lack, a deficiency in the democratic services. Does anybody explain more about that? Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Gwyneth. There was a mention in the report about the resources that we had at the department. That was raised by Audit Wales as well previously. We've made an application for more resources for the departments to do with democratic services, and that's been allowed. That's been, and we've started now to look at recruiting to make sure that we have the resources necessary to provide a service. Very good. That's good news.
Okay, thanks, Gareth. Thanks, Gwyneth. I see no more hands raised, so we'll move on to recommendation. And the recommendations are at 3.1, that the committee considers the report content, assesses internal audit's progress and performance. And at 3.2, that the committee decides whether I think that should be it needs, not in needs, further assurance on any of the audit areas to follow up progress with implementing the improvement action plans. Members, in your hands with the recommendations. Rhys, as approved. Paul, seconded. Thank you very much. Moving quickly on to agenda item number 10.
Mr. Chair, could we have a 5-minute break?
Okay, certainly, Martin.
It's 10 to 12.
It's only 2 hours, is it? 2 hours. Okay, Martin. Yeah, 10-minute break.
Just
no problem.
10-minute break to charge a cup of coffee or something. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We'll see you at 12. Okay, then, members, are we all back? Thanks for that, Martin. I think you was right when seeing all the black screens. We did need that break. I was just trying to get through. Okay, moving on then to agenda item number 10 is the annual complaints report 2020-2021, pages 205 to 230. To receive a report providing assurance on the complaints handling process. Is that Kevin Roberts leading on this?
Chair, do you mind if I do a brief intro and then I'll pass over? We've got Anne Lloyd here from the service, and Kevin does the day-to-day coordination and management of complaints, so I'm sure we'll be able to explain things. So just to introduce in terms of the reasons for this report, as Gary Williams indicated, the constitution change, the Local Government and Elections Wales Act brought in a requirement that Governance and Audit Committee needs to have oversight over the complaints handling process. And so that's been added to the terms and reference for this committee. So this will be the first time that the annual report has been produced. So it's an opportunity for the committee to have a look at what information is available, but also to consider what other information, if any, that it requires. And also just to point out that this complaints information is presented to Performance Scrutiny Committee. So ensuring that there's minimal duplication between the two, so that performance scrutiny considers performance in quite some detail, whereas Governance and Audit Committee needs to seek assurance that the complaints handling process overall is effective. I think that's the key distinction. So in terms of the covering report, I've just highlighted there the fact that the Ombudsman's principles of good administration and good records management, and there's 6 principles, and I think that's useful for the committee to consider in terms of what's required from an effective complaints handling process. There's 2 appendices to this report. One is a summary of the council's complaints handling process and the number of stage 1 and stage 2 complaints received. And there's also the Ombudsman's letter to the council, which highlights some key matters that the committee might want to consider. So that's it as an intro. I'll hand it over to Kevin or Anne to take you through those.
Thank you, Lisa. Is it Anne or Kevin?
No, we'll let Kevin go through the detail.
Kevin, thanks, Anne.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. From my side, essentially, I've been asked to put these reports together and put them to yourselves. So I suppose I'd best give you a brief overview of where we are with the complaints, and you could ask me any questions. As the way complaints are dealt with on the council, I think we're very, very robust in how we do it. The easiest way to judge whether or not our complaints process is effective is the amount of interventions that we have with the Ombudsman themselves. The Ombudsman intervention that we have is very, very light. In the few years I've been doing this job, we've only had one decision that I remember of note where the Ombudsman went against the council. And in that position, you know, the council apologised and compensation was paid. This is something like 2.5 years ago. But it's very unusual for the Ombudsman to rule against the council in how we actually perform. Most of the complaints we deal with are dealt with at stage 1. And another effective way to find out whether or not our complaints process is working is whether or not these complaints are processed through to stage 2. And we don't have an awful lot of stage 2 complaints either. So from my point of view, there are improvements that can be made at grassroots level by officers on the ground. But in terms of the way we actually manage the complaints themselves, I'd say that the easiest way to judge it is the Ombudsman intervention. And I think we've got quite a robust system in place. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. Members, any questions for Kevin? Martin?
Yeah, I think, oops, Mr. Chairman, I think the key to all this is with complaints is how you use them and whether or not we're learning a lesson from those complaints. Also, if you know you're a line manager, and I've worn that hat before, you're actually looking to see whether you've got more complaints in a particular area, and if you have, does that area need some remedial action? So it's good news that we're not getting many through to the stage 2. I just noticed one particular area there, which is quite a big area, and it has 3 or 4 different parts, integral parts to that area. I'm assuming that the line managers would delve into that to see whether all the complaints were coming from one particular part of that line, or whether they were spread evenly amongst them, because obviously I would be concerned if all those complaints, there's one particular section on there which is planning, public protection and the countryside. I'd want to delve a little further into that to see whether they were all in the countryside, or all in planning, or all in protection, just to make sure that we haven't got a problem somewhere. Thank you.
If I may, I can answer that. That's a very brief summary sheet that we have, but we do dig down into the detail. We do have a more in-depth summary that goes through to the services. So we do break it down by each service department. So we've got the corporate services there, but they are broken down by department. So we can nail that down.
And I assume that might come to performance, might it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Kevin. Any other questions from members before I go outside the committee? No.
Okay then, Chair.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. Following on from what Martin said there, looking at the planning, public protection and countryside, that would seem to me as an area that is likely to produce these comments and that data. Is that over a period of 5 or 10 years? Is that quite normal? Thank you.
In relation to the actual annual return there?
Yes.
Over the last 5 years, the complaints in general have dropped slightly. Certainly COVID affected that. But in terms of public plan and protection and countryside, those complaints have dropped considerably where the council was restructured. Some areas that would normally have fallen into that service now fall within highways and environmental services. So that's affected those figures.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rhys. No other members? No? Merrick, you want to come in?
Thank you very much. Once again, Mr. Chairman, I'm on page 209 or 1 in Appendix 1. Just asking, maybe other people know, but I'm not being able to work it out. You have an acronym under 2 and 1.2, PFOW. PFOW. What does that mean?
Public Service Ombudsman for Wales.
Thank you very much. Public Service Ombudsman for Wales. Thank you.
Is that okay, Merrick?
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I should have known it.
No problem. Thanks, Merrick. Thanks, Kevin. Any more questions, members? Well, I'll move on to recommendations. 3.1, that the committee considers the contents of the report regarding the process and performance of the council's complaints handling and agrees whether further information is required to assure itself that the council has robust systems in place for dealing with the customer complaints.
I'll propose.
Do we have a seconder to the, and Paul is seconded. Well, thanks to Kevin and thanks to Anne and Lisa for that report. Moving on to agenda item number 11.
Thank you.
The annual audit summary, pages 231, 242. To receive the annual audit summary from Denbighshire County Council produced by Audit Wales, sent to the leader and chief executive of the council. David, is that you again?
Chair, if I can come in here, I will pick up the initial introduction of the summary and the financial audit elements. I'll then hand over to my colleague, David Wilson, to pick up the performance side of things, if that's okay.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, the audit summary is effectively the culmination of our work over the past sort of 12 months. The report starts on, I think, page 236 of 235 of the agenda pack. It summarises work previously reported and presented to the committee as well, so there shouldn't be any surprises really in the content of the report. The summary forms part of the Auditor General's for Wales's duties. Reference to those duties is then made on page 236, where you'll see the terms continuous improvement, audit of accounts, value for money, and the sustainable development principles. Page 237 then provides further information around the audit of the council accounts for 2020-21. We presented a report to the committee in November detailing our work on the audit of the financial statements, and you can see there the highlights really: unqualified, true and fair opinion on the council's group financial statements, the annual governance statement and narrative report being prepared in line with all relevant guidance and being consistent with the council's financial statements as well. We reflect upon the good quality of the draft financial statements provided to us. We also draw attention to some of the findings from our work and our ongoing grant certification work as well, really. That being said, I shall hand over to my colleague David now, who will take you through the remainder of the summary.
Thanks, David. Chair, I'm not planning on going through all the detail on this. I just want to say that we include in there some of the performance audit work which you've already seen and debated previously at governance and audit committees. Included in there are the local government studies that have been published in the last 12 months. We rely on officers to look at the local government studies, and if there's any issues that need to be raised that are pertinent to Denbighshire, then we expect the officers to have brought those through to members. And the only thing I just want to draw your attention to is we have some outstanding work on performance audit. There are 5 pieces of work which are linked to the annual assurance and risk assessment work. Some of those pieces of work can't be done yet, and they're only small pieces of work that just fill some of the gaps within our assurance and risk assessment. We mentioned two reviews that haven't been reported yet. The first one is the springing forward work. That work is completed now. The report's drafted. It's going through our internal clearance process that I mentioned earlier in the meeting. So you should have that report fairly soon. And the driving sustainable improvement report at the time that we did the annual audit summary was outstanding. It's on your agenda for information later on today. So we've got everything covered there. So as I say, no surprises, but happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, David. Members, any questions on this report? No? Lots of nods of heads. Okay, I'll go to recommendation, and that is it's recommended that the audit committee note the annual audit summary for Denbighshire County Council from Audit Wales. We have a proposer. Rees, thank you, and Martin seconded. Moving on then, members, to agenda item number 12, Governance and Audit Committee Work Programme, pages 243 to 248, to consider the committee's forward work programme. Is that you bringing us that, Lisa?
In terms of any additions to the forward work programme or changes, from today's meeting, there was the Audit Wales report and request for an update from the service. Date to be determined. I would just suggest that a line be added in there just to prompt inclusion at a future meeting, depending on what the regional date for response will be. Nicholas Stubbing was going to find that date.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
But I haven't got any others to add. I think everything else is on there that should be that I'm aware of. Don't know if Gary or Steve or
there's an annual whistleblowing report that needs to come, Chair. I'm just looking at your June meeting. It should really come there because it should have come here. We'll need to work through that list for the June meeting just to make sure that whether anything can slip, just because it will be a new committee, and there may be some elements of those reports where perhaps greater explanation is required for a new committee than would be for a committee that's been sitting for a few years. So we'll work with colleagues just to check that everything on there needs to stay on there, or whether we can move some of those things around.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Lisa. Okay, members. Moving on then to agenda item number 13. This is for information only, as David just mentioned, the Audit Wales report, which is on pages 249 to 60. I'm sure you've read it. To receive the report on delivering sustained performance improvement. So that's to receive the report. Okay, Lisa, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to advise that this is scheduled for the upcoming meeting in June. So there will be an action plan response from the service being presented at that meeting. So this is just for information at this point.
Thank you, Lisa. Something else for the new the new governors committee. Well, members, we just need to go into part 2 now. So we'll stop the. Can I have a mover to move into part 2? Martin, thank you. Ellie seconded. So we're moving into part 2. Yeah, we're okay for that now.